Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sherry Hubert, as Gwen mentioned, Associate Dean of Admissions for Fuqua School of Business. And at Fuqua, our goal is to produce leaders of consequence, courage, and conviction who will make a positive impact on business and society, especially in today's very challenging and often polarizing landscape. And this week's conference really brings together like-minded, smart, emotionally intelligent, and highly decent individuals who are making their own mark in this world, especially as it relates to creating greater equity, access to capital, and connections for women and entrepreneurs of color. I'm so honored to be introducing our luncheon keynote speaker, a woman who has already accomplished so much in her career. I was just talking to her and was reading many of her degrees, her brands, her blogs, her books, her podcasts, her interviews, her speaking engagements. I even learned that she is someone who is so well-traveled. She lives in the present. She practices yoga faithfully. She literally traveled to an ashram and spent 6 weeks in Thailand practicing yoga and her craft. And she must have started her career at the age of 5, really. But she's definitely an influencer of note and making a profound difference in the lives and the businesses of the individuals that she touches. Dr. Roshawnna Novellus, formerly known as the Wealthy Yogi, is the founder and CEO of EnrichHER, a lending platform that connects female entrepreneurs with lenders who want to earn a return on their investment while fueling the growth of women-led businesses. Dr. Novellus is a gender equality advocate who believes in economic empowerment and inclusive economic growth. Dr. Novellus holds a PhD in systems engineering with a minor in finance, a master's of science in information technology emphasizing information system engineering, a Bachelor of Arts in Business Management Economics, and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering. This is why I said she started when she was 5 years old, achieving summa cum laude in each. Roshawnna served on the Commission on Women for the City of Atlanta and was honored as one of the women who means business by the Atlanta Business Chronicle. She was also named one of the 40 under 40 by Georgia Trend, a Halcyon Fellow for Social Impact, one of the top 25 disruptors and innovators in tech, and one of the 27 Black founders and investors to watch in 2019 by PitchBook. I can't wait to hear what inspirational and informative message she has to share with all of us this afternoon. Please join me in welcome Dr. Roshawnna Novellus.
Wow, that was a long bio. I'm so excited to be here today with you. I thought I'd start off with sharing my story with you so you understand how I got here and why I became a huge advocate for equality and entrepreneurship. Then I'll move into how we help entrepreneurs with EnrichHER and my vision for the world. So starting at the age of 3, that's the first time my mother set me down and gave me this huge task. So she had this disease while she was pregnant with my brother that prevented her from staying awake. So she would fall asleep without warning. And she said I needed to take care of her and help her, so she gave me a spreadsheet. On this spreadsheet was a list of people's names and phone numbers and why I would call them. And the reasons range from we needed food in our household to there was a medical emergency, or she just needed the Deltas to come around to support her. And and I took this task very seriously. And 7 days after my 4th birthday, my brother was born, and my mother eventually grew out of this disorder, and she was able to resume being a full-time teacher again. But at that time, that was the first time someone believed in me without any facts. Again, I was 3 years old when this happened, and I did it. I called people when necessary. I did everything she asked of me to do. And in hindsight, that's all any of us need, is people to believe in us, people to believe we have capacity beyond ourselves to achieve most of our dreams. So later in life, when I was 12 years old, my mother said every woman needs to be in charge of her own economic footprint. And she was a member of an investment club meeting at the high school, which she taught, and she said, you're going with me every month to learn about investing in the stock market because you will be equipped and there will be no excuses about you not being comfortable with money. So I went every month with her. I ended up even presenting to the investment club a couple times on which stocks a teacher should invest in. And I became super confident about managing money at this young age. So by the age of 15, I told my mom, hey, I got this. I've devised a whole strategy to pay for my entire college career and everything I want to achieve. And I told her all I needed from her was stamps, envelopes, and to let me do research, right? So from my analysis, the people who have the most options in life understood finance, loved math, and participated in a team sport. So I was a cheerleader in high school and college. I did everything I could to get straight A's in school, and clearly my mom had the financial piece covered. So I wrote 200 letters to organizations across the world, or across the country, all the way from the Elks Lodge of Hawaii to the Tuskegee Airmen Foundation to the Gates Millennium Foundation to the Coca-Cola Foundation. And this process resulted in me getting over $600,000 in grant dollars, which paid for all the degrees that were mentioned previously. And so that just taught me how sticking to a process and having a vision and having that support for people who believe in you and have the resources that you need to be successful is what all of us need in order to achieve our goals. And this has a huge impact on everyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, everyone who has the audacity to go out and follow his or her dreams. And that has shaped everything that I've done since then. So everything wasn't always perfect, It took me until graduating from high school to realize that there are a lot of people out there who just didn't want me to win, right? A lot of us have this adversity, and we don't understand why. Why don't some people want me to be successful in my dreams? Why are all these obstacles at play preventing me from going down this path when I'm qualified, I have a great plan, I'm competent? And my personal experience was I was named valedictorian of my high school, and the school administrators took a vote to scrap class rankings when I was named valedictorian. And my mother, she wasn't going to have it. So she called the NAACP and asked for their support to come to the campus and threaten a march, and if they wouldn't change the ruling. And she was victorious. And I didn't even understand why she had to do all that, because I won fair and square. There was no one even close. But my mother showed me that sometimes you have to lean on resources outside of you and fight for what you believe in to get what you think is right? And then later in college, I went to college at UC Santa Cruz. I'm originally from San Diego. And I was the only woman, person of color from the US in my engineering courses. And I loved math. Again, it was my favorite subject, loved everything about it. But time and time again, the teachers questioned why I was in this class, why did I get these good grades? They just didn't believe it. So one class that I was taking, microprocessor design, my teacher decided to interview all of the students in the class and ask them about my study habits, my work ethic, what was Roshawnna doing to get these good grades. And unbeknownst to the teacher, I was known for hosting these inclusive study groups on campus. So anybody could study with me as long as they agreed to take notes about whatever topic and share it with anyone in the group. That was the rule. So fortunately, a third of the class was actually in my study group. They all shared this with the teacher, and everything was fine. But again, why time and time again do we have to justify being qualified and competent? And I had enough, so I said, hey, I think I'm just gonna quit school. I was double majoring in business. I had enough credits to just stop early and follow my path. But fortunately, or surprisingly to me, the Black administrators at UC Santa Cruz had an intervention with me. They pulled me aside and said, you can't quit school. And I said, why? I'm done, I'm tired of this. I don't wanna live a life where I'm treated like this all the time. Roshawnna, you're a straight A student. Think about all the students who receive B's or C's, who only dreamed of being in science or engineering, who have a difficult journey. What about them? You can't just think about yourself. You have to do this for them. You have to finish. You have to show them that someone like you can finish this program and graduate with this stellar GPA and be there for everybody else. So I said, okay, I'm going to leave for 6 months, and I'll come back and finish. So when I left, I went to Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech was the first time in my life that I ever knew that I had my people who love to learn new algorithms, who loved math, who loved setting these high goals, who loved experiencing life in our own way. I was in the midst of all of these amazing students that were high achieving, and no one questioned them. And I said, this is all any of us ever need, is to be accepted, to be encouraged, and be surrounded by a community that wants us to do whatever our goals are. And it's funny, this morning, one of the women I met in that program, she called me. She went to medical school here at Duke, and she wished me luck at speaking today. And it's just funny that, this happened when I was 20, and the strength of that community still, remains true. So fast forward, I was working in DC doing counterterrorism, and I said, hey, this can't be where I use all my skill sets. So in 2010, I said, hey, I need to focus on helping other people access the capital that they need to materialize their dreams. So I moved to Atlanta and began focusing on learning what are the barriers in place for people to start their business or for people to grow or try the new products. And there are many barriers in place. One, most of us don't have a second chance. So a lot of us want to have our plans perfectly together, our mission statement, our community perfectly together, because we know if we fail, we won't have a second chance to go out in the market. Second issue is that for a lot of the institutions that have pitch competitions, grant programs, and the like, there's no inclusion in terms of diversity of thought, diversity of race, diversity of perspective that is selecting which entrepreneurs deserve support and which don't deserve support. And I was sick and tired of hearing all these statistics. The less than 2% of all funding go to women entrepreneurs from the VC space, of which 80% goes to white women. The highest growth of businesses in this country are for Black women, yet the average Black woman starts with $30,000 in capital, yet our male counterpart starts with 1.3 million. Women in this country are starting businesses at a rate of 1,821 every day, yet there's not enough data or evidence that we're capable of running successful business. I was just infuriated by the gap between the statistics, the truth, and what's available to support all of us who just want to build a life that's more reflective of who we are and what we want. So I started going to angel groups, and they didn't want us there, and said, hey, why don't I build a platform that will allow people to get capital if they're qualified, and it will allow investors to lend to those qualified individuals. So that was the start of EnrichHER. And EnrichHER is a lending platform that provides capital to women-led businesses across the country. We are SEC and FINRA-approved funding portal, which means that accredited and non-accredited lenders can lend directly to the women-led businesses on our platform. We're also backed by institutional capital, which means we have a backstop of $500 million that we have available to lend to the women who come through our pipeline as well. So since we started earlier this year, we have processed applications from 3,000 women-led businesses from 47 states. We've funded our first 70 companies, I'm happy to report. And these companies are real businesses. Thank you. And these companies are real businesses, traditional businesses with cash flow and customers and employees who just need money to grow. So we funded companies that are hair salons and event planners and doggy treat companies, as well as high growth companies. And what we really need is diversification in the options that are available to us for capital. So a lot of times we're pushed towards the VC model, which clearly isn't a fit for the majority of companies. And people who don't build high growth companies aren't able to find the resources that they need because the VCs get so much press and so much attention that the rest of us don't know what resources there are to support us. And we don't know who else in the community is going through our same stories, our same struggles, and who we can learn from. So because of this, EnrichHER not only is this funding platform, we are a network that we've brought together over 19,000 advocates for women-led businesses. We discuss capital, coaching, and connections so that these women can grow. Now, in my ultimate vision for the world is that there are boundless opportunities for capital and connection for underserved founders, whether they be women, whether they be people of color. And how we get there is having a unified approach for how to provide diversified capital to these businesses. For instance, the first company that we funded on our platform was an IT consultancy. She had amazing clients such as Home Depot, LL Bean, and The Gap, but she didn't have enough cash flow to get a traditional bank loan. So she had resorted to predatory lending, and I consider predatory lending factoring with really high rates. So she was giving 10% of all revenues to these factoring companies every single month just to stay in business, which was horrible. She had this opportunity for a huge new client, and she just needed working capital to train someone to be on her staff so she can close this client. So we're able to give her the money that she needed so that she could exit that predatory lending cycle, hire this new employee, and place them on this contract. And she was able to close another $300,000 contract right after that. So this was a thoughtful approach on how you can use working capital to fill in her gap. Even though she had this great revenue, she couldn't get the financing from another source. A second example was Mommy. If you aren't aware, Melissa Hanna founded this amazing company named Mommy that is specializing in the fertility rate of Black women, the mortality rate during pregnancy for Black women. And she really wanted as many options as possible for her to get her ideal investors. She had a high growth company. She wanted to go that VC route, but she didn't want to just pick someone out of desperation. So we were able to give her some working capital so that she can have a little bit more runway as she was raising her seed round. Later, she was able to get Serena Williams and Mark Cuban to invest in her company, and she's doing phenomenal work. And EnrichHER was just a small part of her journey, but it was really important that she had this capital because she just needed more time to close them, and she did it. So these are the kinds of stories that we're adamant about creating and that we're focused on building. So how do we get there as a community in this room? So most of us in this room have resources or connections to different pools of capital, different segments of entrepreneurs, and we need to figure out a way to come together to support one another in our efforts. So for the different capital providers, hey, this is where we fit in to support different entrepreneurs. Here are our target entrepreneurs that we are trying to reach, and here's the best way to reach them. So if we as a community can have this collaborative approach to help one another so that more deserving entrepreneurs get the capital that we deserve, then more of us can grow and scale amazing businesses. So on that note, I invite everyone in this room to join us. If you believe that underserved founders deserve more community support, more capital that we all need to grow, I invite you to speak with me here or contact me after the conference, because that's what I've devoted my energy to, what we're doing with EnrichHER to, and I'm just adamant about seeing a world where billions of dollars flows to deserving founders who are qualified and just need capital to grow. So on that note, I would love to open it up to questions from the audience. Thank you.
Congratulations. This is fantastic. One question I have is, how do you go about making your decisions? Because obviously, you're disrupting the process, but others are saying no because they don't have this, they don't have that, and you're making a judgment of the character. So do you have an investment committee? How do you go about deciding scaling from the number of applications to who you select?
Yeah, perfect question. So if you go to our website, there is an online application process, and it takes about 5 minutes. Through that process, you answer specific questions about your company, like how much money you need, use of funds, what is your traction to date. And then you're presented with a couple options to fund your companies. Those options range from being funded by institutional investors through direct lending, and then by our platform, which is the debt-based crowdfunding platform that we're approved for. If you decide to go down that path, we use relational-based underwriting. So what that means is we look at your character, your grit profile, and that is our thing that we're focusing most on, is developing this algorithm on how did you find grit. We don't really believe in credit scores, and so there's this thing called grit that allows people to be resilient, to keep fighting, even if things are against them. So in our underwriting process, we assess the grit factor, and then we're able to approve you for the loan after that point.
So first, I want to just acknowledge for a moment your queendomness. That you go back.
Thank you.
And that you've accomplished so much, and that you had a strong mother that taught you early. And I'm an advocate, of course, in early childhood, so I know it can happen really, really early,
Yeah.
and that you're definitely a testament of that. My question as I listen to you, which is all of the amazing things that you're doing, I'm an entrepreneur, and my personal question is, do you do that for startups, or do you have to have 2 to 3 years of operation?
So for our network and community, that's open to any entrepreneur, no matter stage. So we have in-city activations across the country that bring together resources for entrepreneurs from the idea stage on. For our lending platform, because the entrepreneur has to have cash flow, that the requirement there is the entrepreneur is in business for at least a year to justify that the entrepreneur can repay. So, but we do help with other resources at the beginning. So invite you to come join our community. It's called EnrichHER Society, and we can provide you with the resources that you need.
So just a question about your decision to go the debt route as opposed to equity. Can you talk a little bit about, why or you went that route, or if you have plans to also expand into equity?
Yeah, great question. So I looked at the landscape of the types of businesses that most entrepreneurs start. So most entrepreneurs do not start high growth companies, and equity investment looks for an exit. So they focus on high growth companies by and large. Sometimes if you have a structured exit, you don't have to be as high growth. And for those that don't know, structured exits just say, hey, I'm going to invest X and you repay me 3X. And that doesn't necessarily have to be for a high growth company. So most businesses are started because someone wants to create a revenue generating enterprise. And with revenue generating enterprise, as long as there's some positive cash flow, you can qualify for a debt instrument. So my vision was not to start a fund where we only had 30 portfolio companies or 50 portfolio companies. We've already funded 60 and we just started. My vision was to fund at least 10,000 women-led businesses, and the only way to do that is by giving them having a financing option that's for them. And so for these reasons, I decided to go down the debt path. We don't have any warrants or equity kickers or anything like that, because again, the research shows shows that by and large, women do not want to give up equity ownerships in their companies, and they feel that when they sign the equity away for a lot of these programs, that it's just not worth it. So that is the reason we pursued that path.
Can I call you Dr. Rowe?
That's okay.
So, I've been following you for like 4 years now. I kind of Facebooked and said I would see you at this conference. So you had mentioned that you are registered with the SEC, and I guess since you guys don't do any equity, I'm just kind of interested to know, like, why would that even be necessary?
Good
if you're only
question.
doing, I'm a private equity guy myself, so.
So good question. We often ask ourselves why we went down this path. But a lot of financing that exists currently for small businesses require the entrepreneur to provide collateral.
Okay.
And we wanted to provide a path that did not require collateral. A non-collateralized based loan is considered an equity security.
Okay.
So
Makes
that's
sense.
the simple reason behind it. And that's a distinction that a lot of people don't know about, that if we said, hey, an entrepreneur only could get funding if they had inventory for this amount or other assets, then we wouldn't have to do this registration.
So do you guys cap the debt piece, like minimum of 50,000, or when it comes to working capital? You gave the example of the one business.
So
You
our
got-
range is from 50,000 to 250,000 per company, and it's really based on the cash flow of the company and what they're able to repay.
I think we're all amazed and just like sitting around like, wow, we're not doing enough. So congratulations. You're all
Thank you. Any other questions?
He actually asked the question that I was about to ask, so I just
Okay.
want to also reiterate that this is amazing, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm interested in the metric behind what you said about grit.
Yes.
Is there a way that you measure that in terms of looking across each of the women who are applying to say what is lots of grit, what is not so much grit? How do you measure that?
Yeah, so I've created this whole algorithm that assesses the grit factor for each entrepreneur. Right now, we only have 3,000 data points, which are the 3,000 women who've applied, and I'm waiting to get to 10,000 to prove that it's an accurate algorithm, right? That's the magic 10,000 number. But the factors that we're looking at are resilience, ability to achieve goals in the midst of obstacles, how they make decisions about their finances in the midst of incomplete information, and there are several other components. In addition, we're looking at other public information that's available, like social graph information. So there's a lot of research that shows financial health is tied to posting activity on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So people tend to, if they're loud online, they tend to be quiet when their finances dip. So we're looking to integrate like some social graph information as well as APIs available for other business information such as shipping data and the like to inform this grit factor. So how does this intersection of different business decisions yield or transfer into their decision-making process to do the best, make the best decision to grow their business? So that's what we're working on now, and I'm really excited to produce something once I have sufficient data on it. So we'll see. Maybe we'll license it. You know, we do need to make money for the company, but I would love to work with others on it.
So I'm Starr Cunningham at 4D, and I would be remiss if I just sat here and soaked all of this in and didn't share with you all that EnrichHER, we met early on, and this vision that she has works. It closes a gap for companies. When we approached EnrichHER and we got involved, I came from an 848 credit score to a credit score that was less than half of that because I had to sacrifice everything to build my company. When she approached us with this grit score and not having collateral. This, it made all the difference in the world. And as we sit here in these sessions and hear all these people with all these grandiose ideas, with all of this data and information who aren't doing anything, she's doing something. And it's something that has made a difference to us at 4D that we thank you for. And it's something that we all can learn from and solve the issues and problems that we have and not look for additional data. So thank you.
Thank you. You're like made me tear up. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm not the tallest, so can everybody hear me? EnrichHER sounds amazing. We know that there's a focus in tech and in the financial industry on really creating these avenues and these pathways for women and people of color, and it's usually women of color that nice intersect. I'm just wondering, have you ever been approached in duplicating or replicating your model, but for like men of color, Black men, business owners, and things like that?
So funny you should ask. Black men raise their hand first before I even launch. Hey, we want to be on your platform before we even launch this idea. And I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way, but there needs to be more like leadership and more platforms that focus on Black men specifically, because there's a huge gap there as well. I decided to focus on women of all races, first, because there is so many people participating in the movement to help women win. So that's why I personally decided to focus on this large sector, but definitely people have asked. And in terms of qualifying for our platform, as long as there's a woman in the C-suite for the company, you can get funding for your platform. So the woman doesn't have to be the CEO of the business.
So now, I just answered my own question while I was standing here, but to what extent does your grit scale take into account receptivity? The receptivity of the person who you're possibly investing in?
So we're looking at that. That's a fuzzy type of variable to fold into an algorithm. So we're still trying to figure out how that plays into it. Some entrepreneurs listen to everyone and then can't execute. So execution is the number one factor, more so than receptivity. But receptivity is important when you're going down a path and there's no way to win through that path, to be able to pivot. And so we're still looking at the best way to integrate that. And if it's a individual factor, if it's like a cousin factor of some of these other components that are in the algorithm.
Okay, so now when I answered my own question, I realize your work on grit is probably based on the book maybe written 8 to 10 years ago, something like that, about West Point grads who succeeded and West Point grads who didn't. So
West Point grads? No.
Yep,
So
that was the original work, as I understand it, based on grit.
yeah, so what we're doing is looking at the entrepreneur's life and the decisions that they made in their life to reach their goals.
Yep.
So the academic approach, started this whole focus on grit, but we're trying to look at it from a different approach. We definitely don't believe the people who are better educated are better at business. A lot of times, the more degrees you have, the less likely it is for you to do everything it takes to make a business successful.
Yep.
We're looking at trying to incorporate some additional factors into our algorithm.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm coming back. I sit on the board of this organization called New Profit, and they invest in formerly incarcerated prisoners because they often have grit and they have business plans. And I didn't know if you were connecting with that, or do you work with other organizations for deal flow? That's one. And two, what sort of interest rates and returns do you offer the crowdfunding? And is it a function of you aren't doing credit scores, but the quality of the company? Does it range? Can you get
Yeah, so for the first question, we haven't connected with any organizations that focus on that target population, but we're open to it. In terms of the interest rate, we focus on providing loans between 8% and 20%. We give the entrepreneur the option to either increase or decrease the interest rate if they're on our platform. So let's say we say, hey, we recommend that you're 15% loan, but the entrepreneur can say, hey, I would rather to open up a 10% offering. And what happens there is investors get 100% of that interest. So some investors are more likely to lend to a company at the higher rate versus the lower rate. So we let the entrepreneurs know that, hey, if you decrease your interest rate, you might have a lower pool of people who want to lend to you. Some have decided to increase the interest rate to the 20% so that they can close faster. So.
All right, I would love to stretch your imagination a little bit. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. You'll tell by my accent, I'm from Kenya, East Africa, for those who may not know. Two questions. One is I heard you went to Thailand for yoga.
Yes.
Why did you choose Thailand?
For several reasons. One, the culture in Thailand is very loving and accepted. It accepts other people. So I tend to travel around the world by myself. So I wanted to move to a country where I felt like that I knew I was going to be safe and all of the like. So for instance, the last couple of days that I was there for New Year's, and I forgot to book a place to stay. So I booked a random place in the countryside, and there was only one person at the hotel who spoke English. And I told this person, hey, I need to eat food every day. Can you help me? And she said, I'll call a local. He'll be on this corner every day on his bike to come pick you up and take you to eat. He doesn't speak English, but he will do that for you every day. And that happened. It was fine. And so that's one of the reasons. Also, I knew other people who studied yoga in Thailand.
Okay, so essentially the yoga in Thailand is good or better?
I won't say it's good or bad, because yoga is a philosophy that people can learn, anywhere, right? And so I wanted to go to a program affiliated by the Yoga Institute of India. So the Thai program that I participated in was part of the original yoga tradition, and I wanted to get the classical yoga training, so that was a part of that decision process.
Thank you. And now my main question.
Okay. I knew there was something else. I'm like, where are you getting? Where are you going with this?
As you heard, I'm from Kenya, and for the time I've been here in graduate school, I kept getting information from my community members. Some of them were dying from very basic, health conditions that could be eliminated by 10 cents, 20 cents. So I went to speak to churches. I was a graduate student, joined organizations. So the church that I went to asked me to form a nonprofit organization, and didn't know there was a benefactor. They wanted to do something for the community. I formed the nonprofit. That was about 2010. So she ended up giving us some good money to start a health center. The catchment population for my community is about 200,000 people, but the nearest health facility, most of them cannot be able to afford, like $50, admission fee or consultation fee. The last man who tried to do that lost 3 children successively, and he was made to work for 6 months to be able to pay, for 1 year, to be able to pay a debt of $50 over 6 months period. So this health center that I've been constructing is about 3-story. In the event of constructing it, I came across some people who told me to come up with a business plan. I didn't know because I was in the academia for a long time. I've continued speaking to churches to be able to sustain or continue the construction, but it's a slower pace. Based on your experiences and your brilliant thoughts and minds, and to any other person in the audience, I would love to complete this health center so that it can continue serving the people. It hasn't begun yet. It has a potential to become an enterprise. Do you have any ideas you can help me with, perhaps, that can link me to any other opportunities too?
Yeah, so there are several sources of capital that focus on Africa specifically. And in fact, 20% of the people who find us are in Africa. We decided not to focus. We decided to focus on the U.S. because we're here, we know the culture here, and we know how to navigate it in a better sense than other countries. But there are a lot of sources, and I could find some sources and send it to you, but we are solely focused on the U.S. because we feel that if we can make an impact here, we could probably make impacts other places as well. And I love what you're doing, and I will just suggest don't quit until the center is built as you move forward. Anyone else? Well, on that note, thank you everyone for listening today. And if anyone wants to speak with me about how you can help this vision of getting more capital and more community to women-led businesses, I'd love to chat with you. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
So you have a bit of a break until 1:45. The next session will be back in Fuqua.